The wind comes first, not loud, but constant pressing against the coast like a slow breath. Then comes the smell, salt, oil, and damp concrete. It clings to the walls, to the blankets, to the boys who have not yet learned what real fear tastes like. Somewhere beyond the mist, the sea hums not a song, but a warning. You are 17, stationed on a stretch of French sand that smells of iron. The bunker shakes when the waves hit, though the officers say it's solid German engineering, built to last 1,000 years. You believe them because belief is easier than thinking about the horizon. The others are still half asleep, their helmets hanging from nails, rifles resting like tired bones against the wall. Outside, gulls circle the wire. The dawn is pale and unkind. Becker mutters that it feels wrong, the tide, the air, the silence. He laughs after he says it, but his hands don't stop trembling. You share your last piece of bread with him and try not to look at the photograph folded inside your jacket, your mother's handwriting, soft and neat. Come home soon, mein Junge. Then the sound begins low, distant, endless. It rises through the earth before it reaches your ears. Not thunder, not storm, engines, hundreds of them. The air thickens, filled with vibration and smoke you can't yet see. Someone outside shouts, boots scrape, orders echo. The sea, once calm, begins to move with purpose. You lift your helmet, still warm from your hands. For a moment, you listen to the wind, the metal, the hearts beating beside you. The wall shakes again, and the first shell lands miles away. This is Normandy, June the 6th, 1944, the day the world comes apart. And this is how it sounded from the inside of the wall. The sea does not wake, it waits. Out beyond the barbed wire, the tide folds in on itself, slow and heavy, like lungs filling beneath a blanket of mist. Inside the bunker, the air is damp and stale. Somewhere above, a single droplet falls from the ceiling, lands on metal, and echoes like a clock that refuses to stop. You are 17, a soldier in uniform too large for your shoulders. Your hands still bear the faint cuts from shovels, the blisters that never healed from training. The wall before you sweats. The lime dust glows faintly in the dim yellow light of a single bulb. You breathe, shallow and slow, so you can hear the world beyond the concrete. The wind against the slit, the distant roll of the sea, the faint hum of the generators. Becker stirs on his bunk beside you, coughing from the damp. His breath fogs the air, curling into the beam of light like smoke from a small fire. He whispers your name, asking if it's morning yet. You don't answer. You both know it doesn't matter. The sky outside has been grey for days, one long stretch of waiting. Somewhere near the door, the lieutenant clears his throat and lights a cigarette. The spark flares, casting brief shapes on the wall helmets, rifles, boots stacked like bones. The match burns down to his fingers before he shakes it out. A faint vibration moves through the floor, just a tremor, the kind that could be sea wind or something larger. The lieutenant tilts his head, listening. Becker closes his eyes and murmurs a prayer he doesn't finish. You imagine the world outside the bunker, the sand dunes sleeping under fog, the gulls silent, the wire stretching along the beach like the spine of a buried creature. The ration tin lies open on the table, its contents half gone. Black bread, a slice of sausage turned grey. You remember the letter in your pocket, folded and unfolded so many times the crease has started to tear. Come home soon, mein Junge. You mouth the words without sound, afraid that saying them aloud might make them impossible. Another tremor passes. The light flickers. Somewhere outside, a door slams against the wind. Becker looks at you and tries to smile. The sound that escapes his throat is closer to a shiver. The lieutenant steps toward the firing slit and peers into the mist. Nothing, he says. His voice is steady, but his shoulders stay tense for too long. You think of the stories told last night about invasion fleets, about thousands of ships hiding beyond the horizon. You want to believe it's only talk, only the ghosts of other wars. The droplet falls again. The sea shifts, almost imperceptibly. And for the first time that morning, you realize the wind has changed. The match hisses before it catches. A brief flare of orange carves his face out of the dark. The officer, Lieutenant Kraus, standing by the bunker, slit with the cigarette between his lips. The flame trembles in the draft, small and defiant, and for a moment he looks older than he is. The lines around his eyes aren't from age, but from squinting through smoke and sleeplessness. He inhales, slow and deliberate. The sound fills the room, a quiet rasp, the inhale of habit rather than pleasure. The other boys watch him the way they'd watch a priest during prayer, waiting for the ritual to end so they can breathe again. Smoke curls up and touches the ceiling, where the air is yellow with dust. Outside, the sea has gone invisible. The fog rolls against the bunker windows like breath on glass. You can feel the chill sliding down the concrete, crawling into your sleeves. Becker sits cross-legged near the door, rubbing warmth into his fingers. Someone hums the first line of a marching song, then stops when Kraus exhales. The officer's eyes shift toward him, and silence falls again. You remember him before this, months ago, when he first arrived. His boots were new then, his hair still combed back neat. He told you he'd served in Russia, though no one asked what that meant. When he first took command of this stretch of beach, he told you the wall would hold forever. The Reich had built it stronger than anything the world had ever seen. He said it with certainty. He still says it now, but you can tell his voice doesn't quite reach his chest. Kraus taps ash onto the floor, tiny sparks dimming before they land. He mutters something about duty, about vigilance. He says the enemy could come any day now, though he doesn't say it like a warning, more like an apology. Becker laughs softly through his nose, but the sound doesn't travel. The smoke drifts to the ceiling and lingers there, caught in the beam of the overhead lamp. It makes the air look alive, as if ghosts have begun to gather. The officer doesn't move for a long time. When the cigarette burns low, he presses it against the wall until the ember dies. The faint smell of burnt paper fills the room. From outside comes the muffled creak of metal, the listening post turning its searchlight, sweeping the shoreline. The beam flickers briefly through the narrow slit, revealing the grey skeleton of the beach. Sandbags, wire, the silent barrels of the guns pointed toward the sea. Kraus exhales one last time and says, "They'll come when the sea allows it. Until then, we wait." You nod because there's nothing else to do. The others lie back down, pretending to sleep. The officer's shadow stretches across the floor like a cross, trembling with the hum of the generator. And as the smoke thins, the sea begins to whisper again, slow, measured, and full of warning. The wall breathes with you. Not stone, not steel, something in between. Each gust of wind seeps through its cracks, carrying the smell of salt and rusted wire. You run your hand along the cold surface, tracing the uneven ridges where the plaster was poured too quickly. Beneath your fingers, you can still feel the trapped air bubbles, tiny pockets of the day it was born. This is where you live. Not a post, not a home, something smaller. 4 bunks, 1 table, a lamp that hums, and the sound of the sea pressing against the world outside. The Atlantic Wall, they call it. A wall meant to hold back the future. You've seen the maps, the red lines drawn in pencil, the promises made by men in polished boots. But when the wind comes, it slides through every seam, whispering secrets the cement cannot keep. Becker says he dreams of the wall falling. He says it in the same tone others use to speak of home. "I can feel it in my chest," he tells you, tapping the spot just above his, like the ocean is waiting for us to stop breathing first. You laugh at him because that's what soldiers do when they're afraid. But later, when the lights go out, you can't stop thinking about what he said. In the corner, under a sheet of canvas, sit the ammunition crates. Their stenciled letters are half faded, the paint rubbed thin by damp hands. You remember unloading them weeks ago, the weight, the smell of gun oil, the way the officer's voice echoed through the corridor, promising that none of this would go to waste. Now the crates just gather dust. Like furniture, no one has the heart to move. Sometimes, when the sea is calm, you hear the old sections of the wall groan. Expansion cracks, the engineers call them. But to you, it sounds like breath, slow and heavy, drawn through a throat of stone. You imagine the ocean on the other side, pressing its weight against the barrier, patient as time itself. You wonder what it would feel like to stand on the Exe beach without this roof above you to see the full sky, to hear the sea without the echo of concrete. The lieutenant says the wall will stand for 1,000 years. You believe him when he says it, because it's easier than believing nothing lasts that long. Yet, sometimes, when the light flickers and the floor shivers from distant artillery drills, you find yourself wondering if the wall feels the same fear you do. You sit by the narrow firing slit and look out into the fog. The horizon is gone, swallowed whole. The sea murmurs again, low and steady, as if it's waiting for the right moment to speak. And in that sound, deep, ancient, and unending, you could almost swear the wall is listening back. The paper feels thinner each time you unfold it. Creased and smudged from the touch of your hands, the edges have begun to curl. You've carried it since autumn, through training, through the crossing, through the endless nights of waiting along this grey and foreign shore. The words are written in your mother's careful script, the ink slightly blurred from where her tears had fallen before it dried. "Come home soon, mein Junge." You whisper the words again, though they no longer sound like a promise. The others keep their letters too. Becker's is tucked inside his helmet. The lieutenant keeps his in a metal tin beneath his bunk, though no one has ever seen him read it. Some of the boys write new ones every few weeks, folded sheets of hope addressed to names that may never receive them. They write when the sea is calm and the air doesn't smell of cordite. They write when silence feels too heavy and words are the only things that move. You tried once, weeks ago, when the weather cleared for a single afternoon. The officer had given you permission to use the supply table. The pen skipped over the paper, the ink pooling in tiny black blooms. You wrote about the sea, about how it sounded at night, about the way the gulls screamed like people in dreams. You told her the bunkers were strong, that you were safe. You left out the part about the nightmares, about Becker's cough, about how every sound now feels like a countdown. When you finished, you signed it simply, "Your son." Then you folded it neatly, slid it into an envelope, and never sent it. Outside, the wind has picked up. The flap of the entrance curtain beats against the frame like a restless hand. Kraus orders the lamps turned down to half power, says it saves fuel, but you think it's because too much light makes the dark feel jealous. Shadows stretch long across the walls, merging until the room becomes one grey blur. Becker lies on his bunk, humming softly to himself. You can't make out the tune, but it sounds like something old, something from before the war. He stops when he realizes you're listening, and for a while, neither of you speaks. Only the faint hiss of the oil lamp fills the room. You unfold the letter again and hold it close to the light. You trace the words with your thumb until the ink smears just slightly. For a moment, the lines of her handwriting look like the contour of the sea, uneven, alive, always moving. The lieutenant walks past, glances at the paper, and says quietly, "Don't keep reading it. It makes it harder when the time comes." He moves on before you can ask what he means. You fold the letter one last time, slide it back into your pocket, and press your hand over it. Outside, the surf keeps breathing slow, eternal, unbothered by men and their waiting. And somewhere in the fog, the sound of engines whispers again, softer now, as if the sea itself is beginning to turn the page. The night thickens until even the sea disappears. Only the hum of the generator reminds you that the world beyond the bunker still exists. The air tastes of dust and oil, of breath held too long. Becker and Hella have taken the listening post, a small wooden shack bolted into the side of the dune, its roof sagging under the weight of fog. Their voices crackle through the field phone every few minutes, clipped and distant, like ghosts calling from another world. You sit by the receiver, waiting for the next report. The line hisses softly in your ear, a whisper of static that sounds almost human. Sometimes it clicks once, twice, and you think it might be Morse, but it's only the wire shifting against the wind. The lieutenant keeps pacing behind you, his boots scraping the concrete in the same rhythm as the dripping ceiling. "Nothing yet," Becker says through the speaker. His voice carries the roughness of cold air. "Fog's too thick. Can't see the sea anymore. You picture him standing out there, the glow of his cigarette hidden behind his cupped hand, the world ending just a few steps from his boots. The fog has a way of swallowing men whole. Last winter, a patrol vanished less than 50 meters from the trench line and wasn't found until morning. Only their rifles remained, half buried in sand. The lieutenant stops pacing long enough to glance at the map tacked to the wall. The paper has gone soft with damp, its corners curled like dying leaves. Red pins mark the known channels, blue ones, the suspected routes of invasion. You remember when he pushed the last blue pin into the paper and said, "They will not come here." You believed him then because his voice had that kind of weight. Now it sounds more like hope disguised as certainty. The phone crackles again, static first, then Becca's voice, sharper this time. "Wait, I think." A pause, then only the sound of wind and the soft knock of the wire against the receiver. Never mind. False alarm. Probably a wave against the mines. You exhale slowly. The lieutenant says nothing. He doesn't need to. Every man in the room hears what isn't being said. The hours bleed together. The lamp sputters, dimming to a thin thread of light. You rub your eyes until you see spots. When you look again, the fog outside the firing slit seems thicker, almost alive, a wall of moving white that flexes and folds like breath. Somewhere beyond it, a shape passes, maybe a gull, maybe something else. You lean forward, but it's gone before you can be sure. The phone rings once more, then goes quiet. You lift the receiver, listening hard, but there's only static. Then, faintly, something beneath it, a low mechanical hum, far out to sea. Engines, maybe. Or maybe just the ocean turning in its sleep. You keep the receiver pressed to your ear, long after the sound fades. Outside, the fog presses harder against the wire, and for the first time that night, the silence feels like it's listening back. The candle burns unevenly. Its light flickers against the bunker wall, making the shadows of the men look taller than they are. Becker kneels by the doorway, his hands clasped loosely, his lips moving without sound. The others pretend not to see him. It isn't against orders, but prayer in this place feels like superstition, like whispering to the sea and hoping it listens. The lieutenant ignores it, pretending to study the map again. He traces the shoreline with his finger, as though he could smooth the wrinkles out of the world. You watch Becker instead. The boy's hair hangs in damp curls against his forehead. He still smells faintly of soap from the ration tin, though he hasn't washed in days. Every few seconds, he opens his eyes to glance toward the firing slit, not for God, but for the horizon. When he finally speaks aloud, his voice is small, almost embarrassed. "Heilige Maria, Mutter Gottes." The words sound strange in the concrete air, soft vowels wrapped in steel and smoke. He stumbles halfway through, forgetting the lines. You hear him start again, quieter this time, as if the mistake itself needs forgiveness. Heller mutters something under his breath. "We're soldiers, not priests." Becker doesn't answer. His knees stay pressed to the cold floor, his shadow trembling in the candlelight. The lieutenant exhales through his nose and says, "Let him finish." His tone is tired, not kind. The sound of paper tearing fills the silence. He's folded another corner of the map, as if that will make the coast shorter. Outside, the wind groans against the concrete. The sea has gone from whisper to breath, steady and deep. Somewhere along the trench line, a dog barks once, then stops. You can hear your own heartbeat if you stay still enough. Becker's prayer drifts on, halting, uncertain, not the confident chant of a believer, more like a message thrown into the fog. He prays for his mother first, then for his brother in Italy, then for all of you by name. When he says yours, it sounds like an apology. When he's done, he stays kneeling. The candle sputters beside him, shrinking into its wax pool. You want to tell him to stand, but the words won't come. Instead, you reach into your pocket and touch the folded letter again. The paper feels damp, the ink smudged into tiny rivers. You wonder if prayers travel the same way, soaked, blurred, half read by whoever receives them. The lieutenant stamps out his cigarette. "Lights low," he says. "We wait until dawn." You blow out the candle. The smoke rises, curling through the dark like a last unfinished word. Becker sits back on his heels, his eyes wide open, watching it twist toward the ceiling. No one speaks again. The wind moves across the dunes, and the wall hums with its slow, rhythmic breath. Somewhere far beyond it, the engines have started again, faint, steady, certain. And Becker's prayer, though finished, seems to echo there, caught between stone and sea, waiting to be answered. The morning begins with the smell of oil. Thick and bitter. It seeps into everything. Uniforms, bread, skin. Becker is already awake, sleeves rolled, his fingers black with grease as he strips down the MG-42 on the workbench. He hums again, that same broken tune from last night, only this time the notes don't sound like prayer, they sound like resignation. The lieutenant orders an inspection at dawn. It's a ritual now, not a command. The men move through it half asleep, their motions automatic. The bolts click, the magazines snap, the belts of ammunition spill across the table like dull gold. Every link smells of metal and salt. You wipe your rifle clean with a rag that used to be white and watch the light bleed slowly into the slit, a faint grey glow that turns the air blue. "Keep them dry," Kraus says, his voice low and even. Rust doesn't ask permission. No one answers. There's nothing left to say. The damp creeps in no matter what you do. It has its own orders. Outside, the tide creeps higher, hissing against the mines buried in the sand. Somewhere beyond the mist, a buoy clanks in rhythm with the surf. The sound has been there for days, a dull bell-marking time, though none of you know for whom. Becker wipes his hands on his trousers and sits back. "Do you think they'll really come?" he asks. You don't look up. Kraus takes a long drag on his cigarette. The ember glows red against his glove. "They always come," he says. "It's only a matter of how much they're willing to lose." He exhales, and the smoke blends with the mist curling under the door. You turn the rifle bolt once more, listening to the clean metal click. The motion feels good, simple, certain. But every sound outside, every gust of wind, every clatter of the wire makes the certainty smaller. Breakfast comes in tin bowls. Grey coffee, a slice of bread, and sausage that tastes of seawater. The cook from the next bunker lugs the pot down the die, trench line, swearing under his breath about the cold. You eat standing, the steam rising like fog from the bowl. The salt stings your tongue. Afterward, the lieutenant gathers the squad at the slit. He points out toward the sea, though the horizon is invisible. "If they come," he says, "you won't see them until it's too late, so keep your ears open." His voice cracks slightly on ears. When he leaves, the silence feels heavier. The only sound is Becker snapping the cover of the machine gun closed. The click echoes down the corridor like a lock turning. You set your rifle aside and rest your palm against the bunker wall. It's colder now, vibrating faintly with the pulse of the sea. You can feel the weight of it pressing back steady, endless, patient. The smell of oil lingers in your hands long after you've wiped them clean. Outside, gulls cry through the fog, unseen but circling, as if something beneath the surface has begun to move. And for the first time, that morning, you realize the wall has started to hum again deeper now, as though it's remembering what it was built for. The sky doesn't rise, it seeps, a pale, bruised blue bleeding through the fog, turning the sea into a mirror that shows nothing back. You stand at the firing slit, your breath clouding the glass, watching the darkness thin. There is no sunrise, only a gradual surrender of night. 4 a.m., the hour when sound carries farthest, when the wind turns colder, when the mind begins to invent things it cannot see. You can hear the gulls before you can see them, distant, restless cries that fade and return like voices lost in a dream. The tide is climbing, whispering against the wire. Every so often, the surf flashes white through the mist, then vanishes again. Behind you, Becker dozes upright, his chin against his chest. His hands still smell of oil and gunpowder. The lieutenant sits by the map table, the lantern off, the cigarette at his lips unlit. He stares at the floor as if he can hear something beneath it. No one speaks. The night watch was quiet, too quiet, Hella said before. He turned in. The flares they usually saw along the horizon never came. The patrol that should have passed at midnight never called in. The line between ordinary and ominous has worn too thin to tell apart. You press your ear to the concrete wall. There's a low vibration, steady but faint like a drumbeat buried under sand. It might be the sea, it might be engines. You can't tell anymore. The light grows thicker. You can see the outlines of the mines now, dull shapes half buried in the dunes. Beyond them, the water looks calm, deceptively still. Krauss used to say that calm seas are liars. The rough ones tell you what they are, the calm ones wait. You look down at your hands. They're trembling again, though not from cold. Becker wakes with a start, his voice rough. "What time is it?" "4, you whisper. He rubs his eyes. "Feels later. Feels heavier," you say. The lieutenant finally lights his cigarette. The flame flickers, catches, and dies twice before, holding. He doesn't look at you when he speaks. The sky's too pale for this hour. He stands, moves to the slit, and peers into the haze. You join him. Together you watch as the fog pulses a slow, rolling motion, like the breath of something alive. Then it happens again, that deep tremor through the floor, a heartbeat felt rather than heard. The lamp sways. Becker's coffee tin rattles on the table. The sound fades as quickly as it came, leaving the bunker silent except for the wind. Krauss exhales smoke toward the ceiling. "Probably the tide," he mutters, but he doesn't sound convinced. You look back to the horizon, where the grey meets the greyer. Somewhere, out there, the sea is moving with purpose. You can't see it, not yet, but you can feel it, that slow, deliberate breath before a scream. And as the clock on the wall ticks toward dawn, the sky turns the colour of waiting. The word moves through the bunker like smoke. No one says where it started, maybe from the radio operator down the line, maybe from a fisherman dragged in from the nearby village. But before the first hour of light is gone, everyone knows they're coming. The lieutenant pretends not to hear it. He keeps his eyes on the map, a cigarette hanging unlit from his lips. "Nonsense," he says, each time someone mentions it. "We'd know days in advance." But even he glances toward the radio too often now, waiting for the static to break into meaning. Becker sharpens his bayonet with slow, deliberate strokes, though it doesn't need sharpening. The sound grates against the silence, metal against metal, steady as breathing. You count each scrape without realizing it, as if the rhythm might hold you together. Someone knocks over a cup of coffee. The liquid spreads across the floor, pooling around boots and cartridge boxes. The smell of it mingles with oil and sweat, turning the air. Sour. No one moves to clean it. Outside, the wind has picked up again, carrying salt and the faintest hint of smoke from somewhere far down the coast. Heller is the first to say it out loud. "They've landed before Italy, Africa, Sicily. Why not here?" He forces a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. "Maybe it's our turn." No one answers. The lieutenant lights his cigarette, the match flaring orange before it dies. "The Atlantic wall will hold," he says quietly. "It was built for this." But the confidence doesn't stay in the room. It slips out with the smoke, up into the damp concrete ceiling where everything seems to hang, the smell, the doubt, the waiting. You sit by the firing slit again. The sea is still grey, still hidden under a skin of fog, but it feels different now. The stillness has edges. You imagine ships out there, vast shapes in the mist, hulls groaning, engines churning through dark water. You imagine men like you, waiting for a signal that will change everything. Becker leans over your shoulder, whispering, "Do you think it's true?" His voice is almost hopeful. You shrug. "If it is, maybe it ends sooner." He laughs quietly, the kind of laugh that doesn't last. "Ends for who?" The radio crackles suddenly, a burst of sound that makes everyone flinch. The operator fiddles with the dials, his fingers shaking. Nothing but static, and then silence again. The lieutenant exhales and says, "See, no orders, no landings, go back to your posts." But he doesn't go back to his table. He stays by the slit, his eyes searching the invisible horizon. Outside, the fog thickens until the wire vanishes. The sea's breath grows heavier, slower, almost deliberate. The men whisper less now, afraid the sound might draw attention. You listen too, waiting. The rumours stay in the air, unspoken but alive. like the wind before a storm. And somewhere beyond the mist, the engines begin to murmur again, faint, rhythmic, and real this time. It starts as a vibration, small, uncertain, like the heartbeat of something buried deep beneath the earth. The first to notice is Becker. He lifts his head from the table, blinking hard. "Do you hear that?" he asks. No one answers. They all hear it, but no one wants to be the first to admit it. The lamp sways slightly. Dust drifts from the ceiling. The lieutenant looks up from the map, his cigarette trembling between two fingers. The sound isn't loud, not yet, but it's constant, like the distant growl of a storm that refuses to fade. The concrete hums beneath your boots. You press your hand to the floor. It feels alive. Heller mutters, "Earthquake?" Becker shakes his head. The ground doesn't move in rhythm. You remember the rumors, the engines in the mist, the invisible line of ships you could almost hear but never see. The lieutenant picks up the radio receiver, taps it twice, and waits. Static hisses. He adjusts the dial slowly, the thin needle flicking, across frequencies that hold nothing but emptiness. Finally, a voice breaks through, distant, clipped German. Then more static. He listens, says nothing, then hangs up. "Drills," he says. "Our guns from the next sector." No one believes him. The tremor deepens. Loose cartridges roll across the table, glinting faintly in the half-light. The bulb flickers, whining against the surge of current. You can hear water sloshing in the metal bucket near the door, rippling to the same unseen rhythm. Becker stands. His chair scrapes loudly against the floor. "That's not drills," he says. The lieutenant doesn't answer. He's staring at the slit now, his hand tight around his binoculars. You follow his gaze. The fog outside is no longer still. It's moving slow and heavy, pushing inward from the horizon like a wall of breath. Inside it, something flickers, small points of light, appearing and vanishing, like stars drowning in grey. The vibration grows, bottles rattle. Somewhere down the corridor, someone shouts. The lieutenant straightens. "Positions," he says quietly, but his voice carries. The men move without thinking, practiced motions, automatic after months of drills. Becker slams the ammunition crate shut. You pull your helmet over your head, the strap catching against your chin. The air feels heavier, the kind that belongs before thunder. Through the slit, the sea begins to roar. It isn't the crash of waves, but a rolling, endless hum, the sound of water being torn apart. Becker grips the handles of the MG-42, his knuckles white. "How far?" he asks. No one answers. The lieutenant presses the binoculars to his eyes. His face drains of colour. "Scheisse," he breathes, almost reverently. "It's them." You glance at Becker, but he doesn't look back. His jaw is set, his lips moving without sound. Maybe prayer again, maybe a curse. The bunker trembles harder, now the whisper beneath your feet turning into a steady, pounding heartbeat. And through the fog, you can finally hear it clearly, the sound of engines. Hundreds of them. The sea itself has started to move. The sound grows until it becomes the air itself. It fills the lungs, hums inside the bones, settles behind the eyes. The sea no longer whispers, it growls. Each second is a drumbeat, deep and heavy, as if the world has begun to move on its own. Becker leans into the slit, his breath fogging the glass. "There's too many," he whispers. The lieutenant doesn't answer. He's counting, though you can see his lips moving, each number slower than the last. Every flicker of light beyond the fog is another ship, another shadow, another heartbeat in the distance. The radio crackles again, no longer a whisper but a scream of static. A voice cuts through sharp, clipped German, then vanishes under the roar. The operator bangs the receiver with his palm, his eyes wide. "I can't, the channels," he doesn't finish. The lieutenant snatches the receiver, listens for a long moment, and sets it down. "They're landing somewhere," he says, maybe not here, but his hand stays clenched, knuckles white. The bunker breathes in rhythm with the engines now. The concrete walls shudder as if something alive is pressing against them. The hanging lamp swings, its chain creaking. A fine powder of dust drifts down, soft as snow. You can taste it on your tongue, chalk, oil, fear. "Stand ready," Kraus says, his voice quiet but cutting through the noise. No one fires until my order. Becker checks the feed tray again. The belt rattles. His hands are trembling, but his movements are careful, almost graceful. You remember the day you met him, 2 boys learning to clean a weapon older than either of them. He'd smiled then. He doesn't smile now. Outside, the fog begins to pulse with light, faint flashes that come and go too quickly to count. At first, you think it's lightning, then you hear the thud far off, dull, like doors slamming underwater. Artillery. The ships have started to fire. The first shell lands miles away, a low boom that rolls through the ground, shaking the walls. Becker flinches. The lieutenant whispers something you can't hear. Another explosion follows, closer this time. The sound isn't like thunder, it's heavier. It drags through the air, stretching time with every impact. You press your hand to the bunker wall. The vibrations run up your arm, through your chest, into your teeth. You feel them more than you hear them. The room smells of cordite now, though no one has fired a shot. The horizon glows faintly, a smudge of orange and silver. The fog moves faster, drawn inland by the breath of the detonations. Shadows flicker in the smoke ships, maybe, or just tricks of the light. The lieutenant's voice comes again, calm but hollow. This is it. Stay steady. Becker closes his eyes. Heller grips the wall. The radio hisses like an angry thing, spitting nonsense in every language of war. And somewhere beyond the mist, the engines keep coming deeper, louder, endless, until the sea itself begins to sound like a machine. The first tracers tear the sky open. Thin red lines, arching upward and fading into the fog, like someone trying to write on the clouds and failing. The sound follows a heartbeat later, the sharp bark of the 88s, the shudder in the walls as the shock waves roll through the sand. The bunker fills with the scent of cordite and ozone, the air thick enough to taste. You press your face to the viewing slit. The fog flashes white, then red, then white again. For the briefest moments between bursts, you can see them shapes on the water, black against the glow of their own gunfire. The horizon is alive now. Lines of fire leap from sea to shore, crossing each other like tangled nerves. Becker's voice trembles. That's not drills, he's shouting, but it comes out small against the roar. The lieutenant doesn't answer. He's at the periscope, one hand gripping the base as if he can steady the earth itself. Range unknown, he mutters. They're closer than they should be. Another blast, closer this time, knocks dust from the ceiling. The lamp sways violently, light flickering like lightning. The radio operator calls out coordinates no one can hear. The static drowns him. Becker opens the ammo crate and feeds the belt through trembling hands. The metal rattles like teeth. Outside, the flak guns along the ridge begin to speak. Their rhythm is frantic, uncoordinated, like 100 hearts beating out of time. You can hear the shells tearing through the fog, their trails hissing past unseen planes. Somewhere above, something explodes, a flash that lights up the room through the slit, turning every face pale for an instant. Then darkness again. The lieutenant shouts for reports. None come. The field phone is dead. The cable must have snapped under the bombardment. You picture it lying somewhere in the mud, sparking quietly to itself while the sky burns. Keep firing. Someone screams from the trench outside. You can't see him, only the flare of his muzzle and the shadow that jerks backward each time he shoots. The sound of the MGs merges with the thunder from offshore until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. Becker fires in short bursts, eyes squinting through the smoke. The gun kicks, steady and mechanical, as though it doesn't care who holds it. Brass casings bounce off the wall and gather around your boots. The heat from the barrel turns the air wavy. Another shell lands just beyond the dunes. The bunker lurches, the floor rising beneath you, the dust turning to mist. You hit the ground hard, ears ringing. For a second, there is no sound at all, just a heavy, pressurized silence, the kind that makes your heartbeat feel too loud. Then the world returns a rain of gravel, a scream cut short, the endless thump of artillery finding its range. Becker hauls you up, shouting your name, his face ghosted white by powder and fear. Outside, the sky is still burning. and through the smoke, you can see it clearly now, the horizon itself flashing, as if the sea has learned how to fight back. The floor begins to breathe. Not the slow hum of distant shells, but something heavier, a pulse rising from the deep earth. Each explosion outside rolls through the concrete like thunder trapped beneath the skin. Dust sifts from the ceiling and hangs in the air, turning the lamplight into fog. You can't tell anymore whether it's the bunker or your body that's shaking. Becker grips the MG-42 as if it might float away. His lips move, but no sound comes out. The lieutenant is shouting orders toward the field phone, but the line is dead, the voice on the other end dissolved into static hours ago. Heller runs from wall to wall, checking the ammunition, the bolts, the vents. His boots leave streaks in the dust, as if he's trying to mark proof that he was here. Then another impact hits, close enough to lift the bunker floor. The sound isn't a boom, but a roar that seems to scrape the air clean. The lamp goes out. For a few seconds, the only light comes from the slit white, flashes from the outside, painting the men in stuttering frames. It feels like the war has turned into a film, flickering and endless, repeating itself faster than breath. You crawl to the table, searching for the matches. Your hands shake too much to strike one. Becker finds his own and lights it against the wall. The flame catches, trembling. In that fragile glow, everyone looks older, faces grey with powder, eyes rimmed red from the smoke. The lieutenant steadies himself against the wall. "It's their naval guns," he says, though it sounds more like a confession than an explanation. "They're softening the coast." He wipes a streak of soot from his cheek. "They'll come next." The word "they" lingers. It doesn't mean soldiers anymore. It means the horizon, the ocean, everything beyond your reach. Outside, the ground splits open again. A deafening crack tears through the air, followed by a scream from the trench line, too far to help, too close to forget. Becker's hand finds your shoulder, squeezing once, not in comfort but in recognition. You don't look at him, you just nod. The bunker smells of wet stone and burnt metal. The candlelight dances against the steel helmets stacked by the door, glinting on their edges. You notice one of them has cracked a thin, perfect line running from crown to brim. It looks almost surgical. The lieutenant reloads his pistol, though there's nothing to shoot at yet. His hand trembles as he snaps it shut. "They'll stop soon," he says. "They have to," but even he doesn't sound like he believes it. Then the next shell lands even closer. The entire room lifts for half a heartbeat, and everything, loose papers, dust, fragments of ceiling, rises into the air before falling again like snow. Becker's match goes out. In the dark that follows, the only thing left is the rumble beneath your palms. It feels like the world itself is shifting, inch by inch, toward the end of something. And, above it all, faint but steady, the sea keeps roaring as if it's learned how to speak the language of guns. The air inside the bunker tastes like ash. Each breath drags grit down your throat, dry and metallic, as if you've swallowed the wall itself. Smoke drifts in through the firing slit, thin, grey ribbons that twist lazily around the lamp before dissolving. The world outside burns, but in here the fire feels patient, almost curious, as if waiting for you to notice it. The lieutenant's voice cuts through the haze. "Report. Who still has contact?" No one answers. The field phone hangs from its wire like a dead limb. The radio hums faintly, whispering a language made of static and ghosts. Becker wipes sweat from his neck and mutters, "No one's answering, sir." The lieutenant doesn't respond right away. He stares at the receiver in his hand, as if he could will it to speak. The cord trembles with every blast from outside. Finally, he sets it down gently, as though afraid it might break further. "Then we act blind," he says. His voice is steady, but his eyes have gone, glassy, reflecting the candlelight the way ice reflects fire. Heller shouts something from the slit, pointing into the fog. Movement on the water. Everyone rushes to look. Through the drifting smoke, the horizon flickers with faint lights, small, orange sparks, scattered across the grey like embers floating from an unseen fire. They blink in rhythm, hundreds of them, coming closer. Ships. The lieutenant grips the edge of the slit until his knuckles pale. "Ready the guns." Becker swings the MG-42 toward the sea. The belt clinks through his fingers, each round catching the light before disappearing into the chamber. You load your rifle by touch alone, the bolt sliding forward with a sound that feels final. Another explosion shakes the bunker closer now, so close that the walls themselves seem to bend inward for a breath. The lamp flickers out, leaving only the soft, amber glow of the cigarette between the lieutenant's lips. He draws in smoke, exhales, and the cloud drifts through the air like a signal. "Orders?" Becker asks. The lieutenant exhales again. "Hold your fire." "Not yet." His tone is calm, but you can hear the strain under it, the weight of waiting too long. Outside, the sound builds. The deep, throbbing rhythm of engines, mixed with the sharper hiss of artillery cutting through fog. The sky flashes white, then red. For a second, you see silhouettes, ships with guns like towers, their barrels pointed inland. Then the light dies, and they're gone again. Becker presses the trigger halfway, his finger trembling. "Sir." "Not yet," Kraus repeats. The next shell hits the outer trench. The floor tilts, sand pouring through the cracks. The noise is so loud it feels like silence afterward, the kind that hums inside your bones. Kraus stands in the smoke, backlit by the faint orange leaking through the slit. His outline flickers like a shadow caught between worlds. "Now," he says quietly. And as Becker opens fire, the bunker finally finds its voice. A mechanical scream swallowed by the endless roar of the sea. The first hit doesn't sound like an explosion. It sounds like the world gasping a sharp intake of air, followed by a crack so deep it seems to come from under the floor. The blast knocks the light from the ceiling. For a moment, everything glows white. Then the color drains out of the world. You can't hear anything but the ringing, high and thin, like a scream trapped inside your skull. When sound returns, it comes all at once. The metallic crash of shrapnel, the rattle of bolts falling, Becker shouting your name, though his voice sounds far away. The bunker is full of smoke. The air tastes like copper. You crawl toward the machine gun by instinct, hands sliding through grit and splinters. The lieutenant is on his knees, pressing a hand to the wall. "Outer section's gone," he says, though the words barely make sense. The bunker shudders again, spilling dust like snow. The world outside has turned into thunder. You find Becker crouched by the MG-42, firing in short bursts. Into the fog. Every flash from the muzzle lights his face for an instant, sweat streaked with grey dust, jaw clenched, eyes glassy. Spent shells rain around him like brass rain. He doesn't look at you. He doesn't have to. You feed the belt forward, feeling the vibration of each round through the table, through your arms, into your chest. Another shell lands somewhere close, too close. The ceiling shakes loose a chunk of plaster that crashes to the floor. Becker ducks, still firing. You hear something whistle overhead, then a dull, heavy thud. The gun stops. You blink through the haze, searching for him. The MG's barrel smokes, glowing faintly red. Becker is gone from the seat. For a heartbeat, you think he's moved to reload. Then you see it, his helmet, rolling across the floor, spinning slowly until it stops against your boot. A clean hole runs through the crown, black and perfect. Everything slows, the air thickens. The sounds around you fade, leaving only the hiss of the gun barrel cooling. You reach for him, calling his name, but your voice breaks halfway out. The smoke moves like a curtain between you. The lieutenant drags you backward by the collar. "Leave him," he shouts, though it's hard to tell if he's angry or afraid. You stumble to your feet, ears still ringing. Through the slit, you can see the beach now, waves folding over black shapes, the water boiling with motion. The ships have drawn closer, their guns still spitting light. Another blast hits, and the room fills with sound again, too much sound. You press your back to the wall, clutching your rifle. The helmet lies in the middle of the floor, rocking gently with each tremor, its shadow stretching and shrinking with the flash of fire. The lieutenant reloads, face blank. He doesn't look down. None of you do. Outside, the sea keeps roaring, dragging the smoke toward land. And beneath it all, the helmet keeps rocking the last heartbeat of a boy who will never hear the world go quiet again. The horizon is no longer a line, it's a wound. It bleeds orange and white. opening wider with each flash of the guns. The sea beneath it churns black, the waves clawing at the sand like animals trying to escape. Every few seconds, the light from another detonation floods the bunker slit, painting the room in stuttering bursts of daylight. Between the flashes, the darkness feels heavier, almost solid. You're crouched beside the lieutenant now, your rifle forgotten at your side. He peers through the binoculars, his face ghosted pale by the explosions. "There," he whispers, as if afraid the sea might hear him. You follow his gaze. Through the rolling fog, the shapes of ships drift into focus. Not one, not 10, but hundreds. Big ones, small ones, some glowing faintly with the fire of their own guns. The whole ocean moves like a single, breathing thing. Hela paces behind you, muttering numbers under his breath, distances, coordinates, prayers disguised as mathematics. "They can't all be coming here," he says. "They can't." But the lieutenant doesn't answer. His hands tighten around the binoculars until his knuckles gleam white. Outside, the flak guns are still barking, their rhythm frantic. You can see the bursts now, bright puffs of orange against the clouds. Some find their marks, planes dive, trailing smoke, disappearing into the sea, but for every one that falls, more come through. The sky hums with their engines, a constant, vibrating chorus that fills every gap the explosions leave behind. Becker's gun is silent now. The space where he sat feels wrong, too empty. The helmet still lies near the table, its dull grey catching the light whenever the horizon flares. You keep looking at it, unable to stop. The lieutenant notices and says quietly, "Focus." He doesn't look at the helmet either. A shell lands somewhere up the coast. The ground lifts under you. The air rushes from your lungs. The bunker's slit fills with fire and debris. When it clears, the sea seems closer. You can see boats now, smaller shapes breaking from the larger ones, riding low in the water. Landing craft, lines of them, stretching beyond sight, moving steadily toward shore. "They're landing," Hela says, his voice thin, cracking on the second word. "There." The rest of his sentence is drowned by another impact. The lamp shatters. The lieutenant throws himself to the ground. Shards of glass rain over you. Smoke rolls through the room like a living thing, curling around the helmets and rifles stacked by the wall. When the shaking stops, you realize your mouth is open, but no sound is coming out. Outside, the sea is white with foam and flame. You can see the silhouettes of men now, dark specks moving through the smoke. Kraus lowers his binoculars. His voice is quiet when he speaks. The invasion has begun. No one moves. No one breathes. The horizon burns on, endless, merciless, a sunrise made of fire. The fog tears apart like fabric. Through it come the boats low, flat silhouettes cutting the water, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Their engines beat like hammers, a deep, synchronized pulse that shakes the air. From a distance, they look slow, almost peaceful, but as they draw closer, you can see the chaos inside them. Helmets packed shoulder to shoulder, rifles raised, faces hidden under steel. The lieutenant presses the binoculars to his eyes. "Landing craft," he says, voice barely audible over the din. "At least 3 waves." His breath fogs the glass. You see his hands tremble for the first time. Positions. Prepare to fire. You move without thought. The routine takes over. The table clears. The crates open. Belts of ammunition spill across the floor. The metallic click of bolts echoes down the corridor like an unfinished prayer. Hela loads the mortar, his fingers slick with sweat and oil. Someone mutters a hymn, half remembered from childhood. The first. Shells from the ships scream overhead, trailing smoke that leaves black scars against the pale sky. They hit the cliffs farther west, huge, rolling detonations that shake dust from the ceiling. Each one feels closer than the last. You taste plaster in your teeth. Through the slit, the sea is no longer water, but movement waves splintering under the weight of men and metal. You can see the first craft drop their ramps. Small, dark figures pour out, stumbling into the surf. Some fall immediately, swallowed by the waves or the gunfire from the cliffs. Others keep moving, heads down, rifles clutched tight, the tide dragging at their legs. Fire! The lieutenant's voice snaps through the air like a whip. Becca's old gun, now manned by Hela, roars to life. The barrel jerks, spitting orange light through the slit. Each burst lights the room. Freezing faces, mid-motion grit, smoke, fear. The echo rattles your ribs. You fire too, though you can't tell if you're hitting anything. The fog swallows the horizon. Every flash of muzzle fire disappears into white. The sound becomes a single, endless note. Gunfire, artillery, screams, the sea itself howling. A landing craft takes a direct hit, bursting into flame. Men leap into the water, their silhouettes twisting in the glow. For a moment, it looks almost beautiful, like fireworks seen through smoke, until one of them surfaces too close to shore, still burning. The lieutenant shouts another order, something about the left flank, but you can't hear it. The next explosion drowns everything. A wall of heat sweeps through the bunker. The slit glows red. You drop behind the table, coughing through the haze. The floor vibrates beneath your palms, a heartbeat gone wild. When you stand again, the sea has changed color. The surf runs dark oil, blood, mud, blending together in the shallows. The men keep coming, wave after wave, as if the ocean itself is birthing them. The lieutenant lowers his binoculars, his voice hollow. They're still coming. And as the horizon blazes, the fog closes again, not to hide, but to hold what's already begun. The machine gun becomes the only sound that matters. Its rhythm is mechanical, relentless, a metallic heartbeat pounding through the bunker's chest. Every squeeze of the trigger tears a line of flame into the fog. The empty casings bounce off the floor, rolling toward your boots in a river of brass. The smell of oil, smoke, and blood mixes until it's impossible to tell them apart. You feed the belt forward, one hand steady, the other trembling. The gun bucks against Hela's shoulder, the recoil shaking his entire frame. Through the slit you see flashes, men dropping in the surf, others vanishing beneath the waves. They keep coming anyway, dark shapes crawling through water that looks thick as tar. The lieutenant stands behind you, shouting orders that dissolve into the noise. Short bursts, conserve rounds. But no one can hear him. The gun knows no moderation now. It roars and roars, the barrel glowing a dull orange. Smoke fills the room, thick enough to taste. You cough and wipe your eyes, but the tears only make it worse. Outside, the beach changes by the second. The tide drags bodies and debris back toward the surf. Helmets bob in the foam like coins thrown into a dark fountain. The air smells like salt and iron, sharp and alive. You can see one man trying to crawl forward on his stomach, his uniform shredded, his helmet gone. He reaches for the sandbag line, almost there, before another burst cuts him down. He doesn't move again. The lieutenant lowers his pistol, his face pale under the flickering light. "Aim for the gaps," he says, voice hoarse, but Hela is past listening. His hands have locked around the grips. His jaw works like he's chewing the air. You grab his shoulder. "Stop," you try to say, but the word never leaves your mouth. A blast from the sea hits the dune above. Sand pours in through the roof vents, hissing as it falls across the floor. The bunker darkens, the light reduced to slits of grey. For a heartbeat, everything slows, even the gun, even the noise as the sand piles on the wounded steel. Then it all starts again, louder than before. You hear someone screaming your name but can't tell where it's coming from. The air pulses with sound. The walls shiver as if the bunker itself is breathing too fast. You reload by instinct, sliding the fresh belt into the feed. The motion feels rehearsed, ancient. You don't think, you only continue. The gun jams. The silence that follows feels impossible. Hela curses, slamming the side panel, but the weapon refuses. "It's overheated," he shouts. You reach for the water can, but it's gone tipped over, lost somewhere in the dust and brass. The barrel smokes, glowing brighter. Hela hits it again, desperate, until the lieutenant yanks him away. "Leave it," he snaps. The roar outside doesn't stop. You can still hear it, the engines, the surf, the screaming wind. Through the slit, The beach is a blur of motion and light. The sand looks alive now, shifting with every impact, swallowing and revealing, again and again, as if the earth itself has joined the battle. The air inside the bunker is unbreathable. Smoke coils from the jammed gun, curling upward in slow ribbons that sting the eyes and turn every breath into punishment. You press a rag over your mouth, but it does nothing. The smoke has taste, metal, oil, and blood. It clings to the tongue, fills the lungs, and settles somewhere deep inside where air is supposed to live. The lieutenant stumbles toward the ventilation shaft, kicking at the grill until it gives. The draft pulls a weak current of grey outward, but it only trades one kind of poison for another, the outside air, heavy with burning cordite and sand. The wind howls through the slit, carrying screams that may be German, may be English, or may just be the sea itself. Heller crouches by the machine gun, coughing so hard he can't speak. The barrel has gone dull red, the metal warping in thin ripples. He looks at you through tears that aren't from fear but from the acrid haze. "It's finished," he croaks. You nod, because you already knew. The weapon has burned itself out, just like Becker. The lieutenant calls for rifles. You fumble for yours, hands slick, vision swimming. The wood feels too hot, as if it's absorbing the fever from the air. You aim through the slit, but all you can see is fog, not white anymore, but black, streaked with flame. Figures move in and out of it, flickering like shadows on a burning wall. Every time you blink, they change shape. You fire anyway, one round, then another. Each shot snaps your shoulder, leaving a ringing in your ears that never fades before the next one begins. Shell casings roll under your knees. Heller fires beside you, both of you coughing between every pull of the trigger. The air whistles each time a bullet passes through it, the sound sharp and cruel. Then the wind shifts. The smoke floods back in, thicker, hotter. You fall against the wall, gasping, vision narrowing. For a second, you think you're drowning not in water, but in the very war itself. The room spins, and you feel the concrete pressing against your back, solid and cold, like a grave you haven't earned yet. Someone shouts for the medic. The word barely makes sense. The lieutenant's voice follows, faint and hoarse. "Hold the line." He sounds smaller than you remember, like someone trying to shout underwater. You wipe your face with your sleeve. Black streaks smear across your skin. When you glance down, you see that your uniform has turned grey with soot. Everything has. Even the sand drifting in through the cracks looks grey now, the colour of exhaustion. Outside, the wind moans low against the wire. Between the bursts of gunfire, you can hear the crackle of something burning wood, maybe, or flesh. The sea keeps moving, the tide dragging everything it can back toward itself. And in the lull between shots, when even the bunker seems to hold its breath, you realize you can't tell anymore whether the smoke is still in the air or already inside you. The sound changes first. It isn't the deep roll of artillery anymore, but a sharper, splintering note, concrete breaking, rebar twisting. The bunker groans as if it were alive. Dust spills from the ceiling in thin grey streams. Each tremor feels heavier than the one before, every impact closer, every breath louder in the spaces between. You press your hand to the wall and feel it quiver under your palm. The vibration moves up your arm, through your chest. The lieutenant is shouting again, his voice lost in the noise. "Reinforce the door, bring the sandbags." But the door frame itself shudders, bolts rattling loose. Heller grabs a crate and drags it across the floor, stacking it against the entrance, though you both know it's a gesture, not a defense. Outside, another shell hits. The whole bunker lifts for half a heartbeat, and the light dies. The lamp explodes, showering sparks that die before they reach the ground. Darkness folds over you thick, absolute. The only light now comes from the slit, flashing white with each explosion, red with each reflection of fire. Every flash reveals the faces around you in fragments, mouths open, eyes wide, streaks of soot across skin. A scream cuts through the dark, not from the beach this time, but from the next bunker down the line. You recognize the voice, though you can't remember the man's name. The sound ends abruptly, swallowed by another impact. "Hold positions," the lieutenant calls. He's clutching his pistol in one hand, a flashlight in the other. Its beam wobbles through the haze, landing on the far wall, a jagged crack splitting from floor to ceiling. It wasn't there before. It widens as you watch, dust spilling from its edges like dry blood. Heller swears under his breath. You can barely hear him over the distant roar. The floor vibrates again, and another line appears thinner, snaking across the ceiling above the firing slit. Pieces of plaster rain down, hitting your helmet with soft, hollow taps. The lieutenant's voice lowers, rough with disbelief. The wall's giving. No one moves. For a second, even the war seems to pause. Then the next shell lands. The crack splits wide open. A chunk of concrete the size of a man tears free, slamming onto the floor in a shower of dust. Light pours through the gap, orange, flickering, alive. Smoke seeps in after it, bringing with it the sound of the sea waves crashing, men shouting, the metallic howl of shrapnel. You stumble back as the floor tilts. Heller grabs your arm, hauling you upright. "Out," he asks. The lieutenant shakes his head. "We hold until we're buried." The ceiling groans again. The smell of salt water and fire fills your lungs. You stare at the hole in the wall, the world outside flickering like a film reel, the sea burning beneath a sky made of smoke. Then, for a moment, it all stops. The air stills. The silence feels heavier than the noise. And when the next shell hits, the bunker doesn't shake, it breaks. The world has turned white. Not with light, but with dust, a choking fog of ground concrete that fills the bunker like smoke from a furnace. You can't see more than a meter ahead. The floor tilts beneath you, and every breath feels like pulling knives into your chest. Someone is shouting orders, but the words scatter in the noise. You find your rifle by feel, the wood slick with grit. The lieutenant's voice cuts through the haze, sharp and hoarse. Fire at movement, anything that moves. His flashlight swings through the fog, its beam catching only fragments of wall, a boot, a face you can't name. The air outside glows orange, flashes of light searing through the cracks in the bunker like lightning through storm clouds. You lean against the broken wall, coughing, the rifle heavy in your hands. The slit is gone, buried under rubble. The only way to fire now is through the fracture that splits the bunker open. Every few seconds, another explosion throws light across it. Silhouettes in the smoke, running, falling, rising again. You don't know who they are. You don't ask. You pull the trigger. The recoil snaps your shoulder. You fire again, again. The sound becomes mechanical, no longer something you do, but something that happens through you. The rifle jerks. Your ears ring. Your teeth ache from the force. The barrel burns your palm. Beside you, Heller fires into the same fog, his eyes red from dust. "I can't see them," he screams. You can barely hear him. "Keep firing." The lieutenant yells back, his voice raw and distant, as if he's speaking from another world. The air moves in waves now, each blast pushing against your chest. Through the crack, you glimpse the beach for a heartbeat, men crawling across it, shadows slipping between the bursts of flame. Then another shell hits, and the opening disappears again behind smoke. You reload by instinct, fingers fumbling with the clips. Your hands shake, though you don't feel fear anymore, only exhaustion, the kind that seeps into the bones. Each motion feels slower than it should, like time itself has thickened. Something slams against the outer wall, not a shell, but a sound, heavy and close, followed by another. The noise has rhythm, footsteps, running. Then, voices, foreign, muffled, but human. You freeze. The lieutenant hears it too. He raises his pistol toward the light, eyes wide. "They're at the wall," he whispers. "Already." Heller breathes. A grenade lands in the rubble, small, round, almost harmless in its stillness. You barely have time to turn. The flash is blinding. The noise folds the air into itself, and then the silence returns dense, ringing, absolute. When your hearing crawls back, you taste blood. The lieutenant is shouting again, dragging Heller upright. You can't hear the words, but you know what they mean. You raise your rifle, smoke stinging your eyes, and aim into nothing. The crack in the wall flickers white, Again, shapes moving, shadows climbing. You fire. The world answers back. The wind changes direction, and the smell of iron comes with it. It seeps through the cracks in the wall, carried on the mist, warm and metallic. You know that smell, it's what follows every battle, what lingers longest after the noise fades. Only now it's mixed with salt, thick and sour, the scent of a sea that's swallowed too much. You crawl toward the opening, still coughing from the dust. The ground outside glows dull orange under the haze. The fog has lifted just enough to show the beach, and for the first time, you can truly see it. The sand, your sand. The same dunes you've patrolled for months isn't sand anymore. It's darker now, clotted and wet, streaked with rivulets that gleam crimson in the light of burning wrecks. Bodies drift where the waves break. Some wear your uniform, some don't. The tide pulls at them without care for sides. Helmets roll in the foam like forgotten shells. You press your forehead against the cold stone, trying not to look, but your eyes won't close. Hella stands behind you, his face grey with dust and disbelief. "It's the whole ocean," he whispers. His voice sounds like a child's. "The whole damn ocean's bleeding." The lieutenant leans against what's left of the wall, staring through the smoke with glassy eyes. His hand shakes around his pistol, but he doesn't raise it. The radio is gone, crushed under a slab of concrete. The wires hang like veins from the ceiling. Another explosion farther down the beach sends a plume of fire into the air. The sound rolls across the dunes like thunder, slow and mournful. The echo rattles your teeth. The sea answers with another wave, heavier, darker. You watch it crawl up the shore, swallowing the bodies, smoothing everything flat again, as if trying to erase what's happened. Someone screams for a medic outside the word mangled by wind and distance. Then another voice. English this time, sharp and urgent. You hear a burst of gunfire, then nothing. The lieutenant finally speaks, voice barely above a whisper. "They're through the wire." His words hang there, thin and final. You wait for an order, fall back, regroup, anything, but none comes. He lowers his pistol and looks at you. "If they reach this bunker, you surrender. Do you understand?" You nod, though you don't think you mean it. Heller grips the machine gun, though it's ruined, its barrel warped and blackened. He runs his thumb along the trigger guard like a prayer bead. "Not yet," he mutters. Outside, the wind picks up. Ash drifts through the opening grey snow falling on red sand. You can hear the cries now, closer, scattered but steady, like a rhythm beneath the chaos. You touch the wall again. It's still warm from the last shell, trembling faintly with every distant impact. The beach glows brighter as the fire spreads. And through it all, the sea keeps breathing, dragging its red reflection back and forth across the shore, an endless pulse that doesn't care who's still alive to watch. The radio dies quietly. No explosion, no flash, just a soft pop, like the sound of a candle giving up its flame. The operator smacks the casing with his palm, twice, 3 times, but the hum doesn't return. The final thread that tied you to the world beyond this beach has snapped. The lieutenant kneels beside him, pressing the receiver to his ear, as if disbelief could bring sound back. Nothing. Only the steady static of emptiness. He keeps it there for a long time, listening to the silence, his lips barely moving. Maybe he's praying. Maybe he's just remembering how voices used to sound. You sit with your back to the wall, rifle across your knees. The world has shrunk to the bunker, 4 cracked walls, a floor buried in sand, a slit full of firelight. Every now and then, the air trembles from another impact, and dust falls like snow. Heller drags Becca's helmet out of the corner. He's stopped trying to clean it. He just turns it in his hands, over and over, as if the motion itself means something. "He was supposed to go home first," he says. "They said he'd done his time." His voice isn't angry or sad, just empty. The lieutenant sets the radio down gently, as if it were a wounded thing. "No command," he says flatly. "No reports. We hold until relieved." He doesn't look at any of you when he says it, and you all understand why. No one is coming. The fog outside has thickened again, tinted red by the fires along the shore. The light seeps in through every crack, a pulsing glow that makes the bunker feel like the inside of a furnace. Each blast outside sends a ripple through the floor. You can hear the muffled clatter of boots, now foreign voices, moving closer. Hella grips the machine gun again, though it's long dead. The lieutenant sees him and shakes his head. "Save your strength," he says. "The fight's already decided." You glance at the slit. The tide has crept closer, licking at the base of the dunes. The beach is still alive with movement, small figures darting between bursts of fire, silhouettes vanishing into smoke. You can't tell who's winning. Maybe no one is. The operator slumps beside the radio, his headphones still around his neck. You hear him whisper to no one, "Berlin won't hear us." The lieutenant doesn't answer. He lights another cigarette instead, his fifth, maybe sixth since dawn. The glow flickers against the cracked wall, the only steady thing left. For a long time, none of you speak. The only sound is the surf outside, folding and unfolding like a slow breath. Then a new sound breaks through, not the roar of guns, but shouting, close now, just beyond the trench line. English voices. Commands. The metallic rattle of rifles being reloaded. Hella looks to the lieutenant. Orders. Kraus exhales smoke, eyes fixed on the broken radio. "Listen," he says softly. That's the new command. Outside, the tide keeps rising, carrying the static of the problemand. Dead machine out to sea. He appears out of the fog like something half-remembered, bareheaded, arms open, stumbling through the smoke. At first, no one moves. You can't tell if he's one of yours or one of theirs. The mist makes all uniforms the same color. His hands are empty. He keeps shouting, but the words are lost under the thunder of artillery. Then he trips over the wire and falls face first into the sand. Hella aims his pistol. The lieutenant lowers the barrel with a steady hand. Wait. The voice is quiet but carries the weight of command. You all watch as the boy crawls forward on his knees, coughing through the smoke. When he lifts his head, you see his face, clearly, not a man's face. Not yet. 17, maybe 16. Eyes wide, lips cracked, a smear of soot across one cheek. He's wearing your uniform, no rifle, no helmet, just the same grey cloth and a look that doesn't belong on anyone that young. "Help me," he says, in German. The word breaks halfway through, shredded by the wind. The lieutenant gestures toward the opening. You and Hella drag him inside, half lifting, half pulling. He's lighter than he should be. His boots are full of seawater. Every step leaves a trail of red in the sand. The smell of salt and blood follows him in. He collapses against the wall, trembling. "They're everywhere," he gasps. "The sea, it's full of them." His hands shake so badly he can't unbutton his coat. You see that one sleeve is torn, the arm beneath wrapped in a strip of cloth already soaked through. Kraus crouches in front of him, voice low. "Where's your unit?" The boy blinks hard, as if the question itself hurts. "Gone," he says. "The bunker! It broke. I ran. I don't know which way." The lieutenant nods once, slow. He doesn't ask more. The boy's eyes keep darting toward the crack in the wall, where the firelight pulses like a heartbeat. He flinches every time it flares. You offer him water. He drinks too quickly, spilling, half of it down his chin. When he's done, he leans his head back against the stone, eyes closing. "I thought I was the only one left," he whispers. His voice cracks on the last word. Hella looks at the lieutenant. "What do we do with him?" Kraus doesn't answer right away. He stares at the boy's hands, raw, shaking, empty, and finally says, "He stays. No one goes back out there." The boy opens his eyes again. "They're close," he murmurs. "I heard them talking." You all listen, but there's nothing now, just the wind moving through the holes in the wall, sounding almost like breath. The lieutenant stands and holsters his pistol. Then we wait. Outside, the fog thickens, rolling over the dunes. You can't see the sea anymore, but you can hear it, the slow drag of water pulling across the sand, the endless rhythm of something vast and indifferent. The boy closes his eyes. His lips move without sound. And for the first time, you realize he isn't praying, he's counting. The first crack sounds like thunder. The second sounds like breath, a long, low exhale from the earth itself. Then comes the third, louder, closer, final. The ceiling fractures in a single shuddering heartbeat, and the bunker begins to fold in on itself. "Down!" the lieutenant shouts, his voice swallowed by the roar. Dust explodes from the walls. The lamp bursts, plunging the room into a rolling grey fog lit only by the fires outside. You drop flat, covering your head, as chunks of concrete slam into the floor. The sound is endless, like waves breaking against rock, over and over, until you can't tell where one ends and the next begins. The boy screams, his voice cuts through everything. You see him near the far wall, pinned beneath a beam. Hella and the lieutenant rush to him, dragging at the rubble, coughing, eyes streaming. You try to help, but the air has turned to chalk. Each breath feels like swallowing glass. A corner of the ceiling caves in completely, opening a jagged wound to the outside. Smoke and daylight flood in together, mixing until you can't tell them apart. Through the hole, the sky burns orange, the same color as the sea. The world beyond is a blur of motion, men running, ships firing, the surf boiling with flame. "Hold him still," the lieutenant shouts. Hella pulls at the beam again, veins bulging in his neck. It finally gives, rolling away with a grinding groan. The boy gasps for air, his leg twisted, uniform soaked red. "It's all right," you tell him, though it isn't. The next impact hits just outside. The shockwave slams through the bunker, throwing you against the wall. The floor tilts. A fresh crack splits the back wall from corner to corner, a black line growing wider with each tremor. The structure moans like an old ship taking on water. The lieutenant stumbles to his feet. His voice is hoarse, his words sharp. "Everyone out, now." You hesitate. Leaving means stepping into the open, into the storm of steel and fire you can hear just beyond the breach. But staying means being buried. You grab the boy under the arms. Hella takes the other side. Together you drag him toward the gap. The air outside hits you like a slap, hot, alive, full of sound. For the first time, you see the beach clearly. Smoke and flame stretch for miles. The ocean is black with ships. The dunes that once hid you are flattened. The world you knew has been erased. Behind you, the bunker groans one last time. The lieutenant looks back, as if expecting it to stop, but it doesn't. The roof collapses in a single, final sigh. The dust rises in a great white cloud, swallowing everything it built to protect. You pull the boy farther down the trench, coughing, stumbling. He's barely conscious now, whispering for his mother. The lieutenant turns away from the ruin, his face unreadable. "The wall's gone," he says softly. And for the first time since the morning began, the sea sounds louder than the guns. You run without direction. There is no formation, no command, just movement. The air itself seems to push you forward, thick with dust and noise. Each breath burns. Each step sends shards of stone and glass grinding under your boots. The trench that once led to the next bunker is gone, buried under mounds of sand and concrete. You follow what's left of it anyway, guided by instinct more than reason. The lieutenant leads, his uniform torn and blackened, his pistol still in hand. Behind him, Hella staggers under the weight of the boy with the broken leg, dragging him one step at a time. You trail them both, glancing back every few meters, though there's nothing left to see, only the smouldering ruin that used to be your post, half swallowed by smoke. The sky above the beach glows orange and grey, a colour you've never seen before. It looks like dusk, but it isn't. The day hasn't ended, it's simply changed shape. Bombers still circle overhead, their bellies flashing with each release. The sound rolls inland in waves, like thunder that never stops. You climb a rise of sand where the dunes used to be. From there, you see it all, the sea alive with ships, the shore crawling with men, thousands of them. Their rifles glint like water in the firelight. They move in waves too, synchronized with the surf. Some fall, others climb over them. The line keeps moving forward. Hella slips in the sand, the boy crying out as his leg twists. You drop beside them, grabbing the other arm, the smell of blood sharp in the heat. The The boy's face has gone pale, his lips blue with shock. "Leave me," he whispers. "You'll be caught." You shake your head, but he tries to push you away anyway, weakly. "Please," he breathes. "Just go." The lieutenant crouches beside him, his face streaked with soot. "Quiet," he says gently. We move together. He reaches into his coat and pulls out a folded scrap of paper, his orders, now unreadable beneath smudges, of ash. He stares at it for a moment, then lets it fall. The wind carries it off toward the sea. The next explosion lands somewhere behind you, a shockwave that throws sand across your faces. You press down, arms over your heads, as debris rains down. When you rise again, your ears ring, and the boy has stopped crying. He's gone still, his chest no longer moving. Hella stares at him for a long time, his jaw set. Then, without a word, he lets go. The lieutenant says nothing. None of you do. You keep moving. The air inland feels thicker, quieter, no less dangerous, only different. The distant sound of the ocean follows, muted now by hills and wind. Every few steps, you stumble, the ground soft underfoot, the sand already filling your tracks. Behind you, the beach still burns. Ahead, the land is empty, grey and silent. The lieutenant doesn't look back. "Keep going," he says. "If we stop now, the sea will catch us." You run until the sound of the waves becomes only a memory. Faint, impossible, but still there, breathing just behind your shoulder. The wire sings. Each gust of wind plucks its rusted strands, making a thin, trembling hum that carries across the field. You stop when you hear it, not from fear, but because the sound feels wrong, too alive for what it holds. The lieutenant raises a hand, signaling silence. Hella freezes beside you, eyes fixed on the fence ahead. The wire stretches for 50 meters, sagging between half-buried posts, its barbs heavy with cloth, helmets, and something darker. The fog rolls low across it, hiding shapes that only reveal themselves when the light shifts, a boot here, a hand there, the curve of a shoulder caught where the metal meets the flesh. They hang like abandoned coats, motionless except when the wind moves them. You swallow hard and move closer. The air smells of smoke and wet iron, thick enough to taste. One of the bodies nearest you still wears the field grey, though the colour has turned to ash. His rifle dangles from the strap, barrel sunk into the mud. The wire runs through his sleeve, pinning him upright in a pose that looks almost patient. The boy's face is young, younger than Becca, younger than you. The lieutenant steps around him carefully, eyes low. He doesn't speak. His pistol hangs loose at his side, forgotten. You all move in single file along the wire, following it inland, hoping it might lead to cover or a road or anything that isn't burning. Each step crunches softly in the sand, and each crunch feels louder than gunfire. Hella stops suddenly. His boot has caught another strand. When he looks down, his face goes white. A second later, you see why the wire is looped through a cluster of helmets, each one filled with sand and something else, something you don't want to name. You help him untangle the strap in silence. The sound of the wire humming never stops. A breeze shifts the fog. For a moment, you can see the far end of the line, the place where the fence disappears into a dune. There are more bodies there, German and Allied, tangled together. The sea must have pushed them inland during the high tide. Some still wear their packs. One clutches a photograph in his hand. The paper flutters against the wind, edges soaked and torn. You can't see the face on it. The lieutenant pauses beside that figure and kneels. He doesn't touch the body, only closes his eyes for a second. When he stands again, his voice is quiet. "Don't step on them," he says. "We keep moving." You skirt the wire carefully, boots brushing against the dead grass. The hum fades a little as you leave it behind, but it doesn't disappear. It follows, faint and constant, a single, unbroken note that vibrates somewhere between sound and memory. When you glance back one last time, the fog folds over the fence again, hiding everything. Only the hum remains, soft and thin, like the sea whispering through teeth. The field appears like a mirage, wide, empty, swaying under a skin of pale smoke. You don't know what's growing here anymore. The stalks are burned, black at the tips, and brittle as glass. The air hums faintly, the sound of fire gone quiet but not dead. Each step through it sends ash swirling around your boots. You move slowly, afraid to break the silence, though the war hasn't truly left. You can still hear it, a low, steady rumble from the coast, a heartbeat that refuses to stop. The lieutenant leads, his silhouette flickering in the haze, the pistol hanging loose at his side. Hella follows close behind, his head bent low, coughing into his sleeve. You've lost your sense of direction. The fog and smoke blend sky with earth until everything looks the same shade of grey. You could walk in circles here and never know. When the wind shifts, you catch glimpses of a barn torn open, its beams smouldering. The remains of a cart turned to charcoal, a body slumped beside it, one arm buried in ash. You look away, though it makes no difference. The images stay, burned into the inside of your eyelids. The smoke stings your throat. Every breath tastes like burnt grain, sweet and bitter at once. The field must have been farmland once. You imagine the family who owned it, the quiet mornings, the smell of bread, the sound of a plough moving through damp earth. Then you imagine the sound replaced by artillery, and the thought collapses. A shadow moves to your left. You freeze, lifting your rifle, though your hands ache from holding it so long. The shape steps into view, not an enemy, not a soldier at all, but a cow, or what's left of one. Its hide hangs loose, eyes glazed white. It stumbles once, then falls, smoke curling from the hole in its side. The silence after it hits the ground feels heavier than any explosion. Hella mutters something under his breath, a curse or a prayer, you can't tell which. The lieutenant doesn't stop walking. Keep moving, he says softly. Don't look. You follow, though every part of you wants to stop. The smoke thickens again, rising higher, coiling like ghosts above the scorched field. You start to see faces in it, Becca's, the boys, maybe your own. The mind plays tricks when it has nothing left to hold on to. When you reach the far edge, the earth dips into a shallow trench lined with mud and broken helmets. The lieutenant halts, kneeling to touch the ground. It's still warm. They shelled this hours ago, he says. We'll rest here. You drop to your knees, muscles shaking. The air feels heavier, the smoke settling low, crawling across the dirt like water. The horizon behind you glows, faintly red, the last light of the burning coast. You lie back, staring up into the grey sky. The smoke drifts above you like clouds that have forgotten how to move. For a moment, the wind dies completely, and the field goes still. You close your eyes, and the world feels weightless, not peaceful, not safe, only suspended, as if everything has stopped just before it falls again. The farmhouse appears out of the smoke like a memory. At first, you think it's another ruin, a shadow cut from the fog, but as you draw closer, you see walls still standing, half covered in soot, one corner of the roof caved in. The windows are gone, glass scattered across the grass like frost. A weathered door swings open and shut with the wind, the hinge creaking softly, as if the house itself is breathing. The lieutenant stops first, raising a hand. "Shelter," he says, his voice little more than a rasp. You all move cautiously, rifles ready, though you already know there's no one left alive here. The air smells of wet wood and something sweeter beneath it, milk gone sour, fruit burned down to syrup. Inside, the light is dim and yellow, filtered through the smoke still creeping in from the fields. The kitchen is almost intact. Plates lie cracked on the table, a kettle overturned, the faint shadow of a fire long extinguished marking the hearth. On the wall hangs a single photograph, tilted a man, a woman, and a little girl in summer clothes, smiling at something just beyond the frame. Their faces are grey with dust now, but the eyes still shine faintly under the soot. Hella finds a loaf of bread in the cupboard, stiff as stone. He breaks it anyway, dividing it into pieces. None of you speak while you eat. The sound of chewing feels too loud in the stillness. The lieutenant stands by the window, watching the horizon through a gap in the smoke. "They'll come this way," he murmurs. "Maybe tonight, maybe sooner." His tone is not warning but resignation. You lean against the cold wall, letting your eyes adjust. The room feels almost safe. The wind outside rattles through the boards, but it sounds more like weather now than war. You imagine, for one brief moment, that the world has stopped fighting. Then you hear it faint at first, then clearer. Footsteps, not boots pounding like soldiers, but something slower, careful. The lieutenant raises his hand, signaling silence. The footsteps draw closer, crunching on gravel just outside. You grip your rifle, heart hammering. The door creaks open. A shape fills the frame, small, hunched, carrying something white. It's an old woman. Her hair is matted grey, her face streaked with soot. In her arms she holds a lamb, limp and lifeless, its wool blackened by smoke. She looks at you all without fear, only exhaustion. The lieutenant lowers his pistol first. He steps forward, speaks softly in French words you can't follow but understand anyway. She nods once, setting the lamb down on the step. Then she turns and walks back into the smoke, disappearing before anyone can stop her. No one moves for a long time. The door sways in the wind again, back and forth, its rhythm steady and sad. You stare at the spot where she stood until the fog swallows it completely. Outside, the last light fades, and the sky begins to fall with rain that smells of ash. It happens quietly, almost gently, as if the war itself pauses to take a breath. You step outside to fetch water from the broken trough near the farmhouse wall. The rain has turned the air cold and clean, carrying away the stench of fire for the first time all day. The ground is slick beneath your boots, the puddles tinged brown with soil and ash. You kneel to fill the canteen, and that's when you see him, a figure through the mist, walking slowly across the field. At first, you think it's one of yours. The silhouette is upright, steady, the gait sure. Then he draws closer, and the shape of his helmet is wrong. Rounder, foreign. A khaki blur through the rain. Your breath catches. The lieutenant sees him too, raises his pistol, and whispers, "Get down." But the man doesn't fire. He doesn't even lift his weapon. He's carrying something white, a strip of cloth tied to the barrel of his rifle. It moves in the wind like a piece of torn sky. He walks straight toward you, unhurried, his boots sinking into the wet earth with each step. When he's close enough for you to see his face, you freeze. He's young, maybe your age, maybe younger, eyes wide and strangely calm. Mud stains his cheeks, and his hands tremble, but there's no fear in them. He stops 10 meters away, raises one palm, and says something in English you don't understand. The tone, though, is clear. It's not command, it's mercy. The lieutenant lowers his gun a fraction. "Medic," he murmurs. You notice the red cross painted on the stranger's sleeve, blurred by rain but unmistakable. He's unarmed, a battlefield angel, caught between hells. The wind gusts, flapping the white cloth. The man takes another step forward, then another, until he's standing within arm's reach. You can hear the steady rhythm of his breathing. The lieutenant nods once a silent truce, fragile and wordless. The medic kneels beside the boy with the broken leg, who's still unconscious by the doorway. He opens a pouch, hands shaking slightly as he pulls out a roll of bandages. You watch him work, methodical, gentle. His voice is low as he murmurs words you can't translate. It sounds like prayer, or maybe apology. Hella stares, bewildered. "Why would he help us?" he whispers. The lieutenant doesn't answer. He just watches, rain dripping from his cap. When the bandages are tied and the wound dressed, the medic stands. He meets your eyes for a moment, just a heartbeat, then turns back toward the smoke. You could stop him, could raise your rifle, could end the strange miracle that's just walked into your war. But you don't. You watch him vanish into the fog, the white cloth disappearing last. For the first time since dawn, you lower your weapon completely. The rain grows heavier, washing the soot from your face. In the distance, the sea still rumbles, not angry anymore, only tired. You look to the lieutenant. He nods once. "Even hell," he says quietly, "lets one angel pass." By morning, the rain has stopped, but the world hasn't changed. The fog still lingers, heavy and low, swallowing the ruins of the farmhouse and muting the sound of the sea. You wake to the hollow echo of boots, not German, not the careful tread of men retreating, but a different rhythm entirely. Steady, measured, coming closer. The lieutenant hears it first. He rises from where he'd been sleeping against the wall, pistol already in hand. Hella stirs beside you, rubbing the grit from his eyes. "Patrol?" he asks, though the question sounds more like hope than belief. The lieutenant doesn't answer. He moves to the doorway and peers into the pale light. Through the mist, you see them shadows at first, then figures. Khaki again. Helmets smooth and rounded. Rifles raised, glinting faintly in the morning haze. There are more than you can count, fanning out across the field in silence. They advance without hurry, their shapes growing sharper with each step. "Stay still," the lieutenant whispers. His voice has lost all authority, all the steel it once carried. He holsters his pistol, eyes distant, mouth tight. They've taken the coast. It's over. Hella grips his rifle anyway. "We can still—" "No," the lieutenant interrupts. His tone is final, not unkind. "We're ghosts now. Don't give them a reason to bury us twice." You look at him, at the grey dust clinging to his coat, at the faint tremor in his hands. You realize he's right. There's nothing left to defend, no wall, no post, no country. Only the choice of how to stop fighting. The soldiers shout something in English. You can't make out the words, but the meaning is clear. The lieutenant raises his hand slowly, palms open, pistol dangling by a single finger before it drops into the mud. Hella hesitates a heartbeat longer, then lets his rifle fall too. The clatter seems to echo forever. You follow, your arms heavy, your fingers stiff. The gesture feels strange, not defeat exactly, but release. The muscles in your shoulders ache from carrying the weight of obedience too long. The soldiers move closer. One of them, a sergeant, maybe calls again, pointing toward the ground. You kneel. The cold mud seeps through your trousers, the chill biting your knees. Hands still raised, you glance sideways. The lieutenant is kneeling too, his expression unreadable, eyes fixed on the horizon, where the fog meets the sea. For a long moment, nothing happens. The wind moves softly through the wheat stubble. Somewhere far off, a gull cries the same sound you heard the day before, when the wall still stood, when the world hadn't yet collapsed. Then one of the Allied soldiers steps forward and lowers his weapon slightly. He says something you don't understand but recognize all the same, a word that belongs to no flag, no army. Surrender. The lieutenant exhales. "Keep your hands up," he murmurs. And as you do, the war inside you begins to go quiet. The hands that offer you water are shaking, not from fear, from exhaustion. The Allied soldier kneels in front of you, rifle slung behind his back, a dented metal can in his grip. He gestures for you to drink. You hesitate, unsure whether this is mercy or mockery, but the lieutenant nods faintly beside you. You take the can. The water tastes like metal and salt. It runs down your throat too fast, too cold, stinging where the smoke has burned the back of it raw. You cough, wipe your mouth with your sleeve, and look up. The soldier is young, maybe 19, freckles faint beneath a layer of grime. His eyes are pale, grey-blue like the morning sea. He doesn't speak your language, but he doesn't need to. His face says everything. You're finished. You're still alive. Hella drinks next. His hands tremble so badly the water spills down his chin. The soldier steadies the can for him, careful not to touch. You realize, watching them, that he's more afraid of pity than bullets. When he's done, he sets the can down in the mud, between you like an offering, then steps back. The lieutenant sits with his spine straight, eyes on the horizon. He hasn't said a word since surrendering his pistol. The British sergeant standing over him studies him in silence for a long moment, before finally speaking calm, clipped words you can't follow. The lieutenant simply nods once. Whatever passes between them doesn't need translation. A jeep grinds up through the field, tires squelching in the wet soil. More soldiers appear silhouettes against the mist. One carries a Red Cross armband. Another shouts orders, motioning toward the coast. You can hear the sea again, though faintly now, its rhythm softer, tired. The guns have stopped completely. The medic moves between you, checking for wounds. He presses your arm gently, muttering something that sounds like, "lucky." You want to tell him you don't feel lucky, that you haven't since before dawn, but the voice won't come. Instead, you nod. He smiles, quick and awkward, then moves on to the next man. Beside you, Hella whispers. It's strange. What is? You murmur. He looks at the water can, half sunk in mud. How quiet it is when you stop shooting. The lieutenant hears him. His eyes flicker toward you both. That's not quiet, he says softly. That's what peace sounds like when it's still deciding if it wants you. The sergeant gestures for you to stand. You do, slowly, legs stiff from crouching so long. The soldier who gave you the water picks up the can again, slinging it over his shoulder. As he turns away, you catch his eyes once more. There's no hatred there, no triumph, only fatigue, and something that looks almost like sorrow. The wind carries the scent of the sea, inland salt and smoke and rain. You close your eyes, and for the first time, the sound of water doesn't mean death. It just means thirst. The march begins at noon, when the fog finally burns away. The field that had hidden everything now lies bare under a pale, colourless sun. The air smells of mud, smoke, and iron. You stand in a line of men, German, silent, hollow-eyed, your boots heavy with water and ash. The Allied soldiers herd you forward, rifles slung but ready. No one speaks. There's no need. The language of defeat requires no translation. You walk past what used to be the front. Everywhere the earth is torn open, trenches collapsed into themselves, bunkers reduced to heaps of concrete and rebar. A rusted helmet, half buried in the sand, catches the light like a mirror. The sea glints behind it, deceptively calm, washing the last traces of the morning's battle into its endless mouth. The lieutenant walks a few paces ahead, his posture stiff despite the limp in his leg. The British sergeant assigned to watch him keeps a cautious distance. Occasionally, their eyes meet a brief nod, mutual. Acknowledgement between men who no longer belong to this fight. Hella stumbles beside you, his hands bound loosely in front. Feels longer than the way here, he mutters. His voice cracks from thirst. You want to answer, but there's nothing worth saying. He already knows. The path turns inland, through a stretch of scorched hedgerows and churned soil. A horse lies half buried where the road bends, its flank bloated, eyes glazed with flies. The smell clings to your throat, thick and sweet. One of the younger prisoners retches but keeps walking. The guards don't look away. A farmhouse still smoulders in the distance, not the one you hid in, but another just like it. Its roof is gone, and the walls have collapsed inward, forming the shape of a giant mouth frozen mid-breath. In the yard stands a broken signpost. The letters are burned, unreadable. The lieutenant pauses there, staring for a long time before moving on. You pass a ditch filled with helmets, dozens of them, piled, like discarded bowls. British, American, German. The rain from earlier has collected in their brims, reflecting the sky in tiny, perfect fragments. For a moment, it looks almost beautiful, as if the war has left behind a constellation of its own making. The column slows as it reaches the edge of a village. What's left of it? Houses are gutted, windows blown out, doors hanging by hinges. A bicycle leans against a wall, both wheels melted into black loops. Somewhere beneath the rubble, a radio crackles faintly, a tune warped by static, maybe a waltz, still playing to an audience of ghosts. The sergeant calls a halt. You stop. The sound of marching fades, replaced by the soft hiss of wind moving through broken chimneys. The lieutenant turns slightly, looking back toward the sea, now only a shimmer on the horizon. It was all one wall, he says quietly. We just didn't see it. Then the order comes, forward, and the line moves again, through the ruins of what once tried to stand. The first drop falls onto your sleeve, leaving a dark circle that spreads slowly before disappearing into the grey fabric. Then another, and another. Within moments, the entire column is wet, a procession of colourless men trudging through colourless rain. The sky hangs low and swollen, the kind of rain that doesn't pour, only presses down, steady and patient, until it has soaked through everything. You lift your head to it. The coolness stings at first, washing the smoke from your face, the grit from your mouth. For the first time in days, the air smells clean, not of gunpowder or death, but of earth and water. It feels wrong, almost insulting, that the same world that burned this morning can now weep so gently. The lieutenant walks ahead, his cap pulled low, his uniform darkened nearly black. Hella trudges beside you, his eyes half closed, lips moving without sound. You think he might be praying, or counting steps, or just trying to stay conscious. The guards walk behind, rifles lowered, their boots sinking deep into the mud. They don't hurry you. The war has already done that. A stream cuts across the road, swollen with rainwater. The prisoners cross one by one, boots filling with cold, silty water. You watch the ripples spread out, carrying bits of straw, a single dead leaf, and something red that vanishes too quickly to name. On the other side, the path curves around a broken wall, what used to be part of a churchyard. The bell tower is gone, but the cross at its peak still stands, leaning slightly, streaked with soot. The rain falls harder now, beating against your helmet with a rhythm that almost drowns out the world. You look up and see the sky as one endless curtain, grey and indifferent. Somewhere in the distance, thunder mutters like a god who's run out of patience. The column halts near a grove of trees, thin and shivering under the weight of the storm. The guards wave you down. Rest, one of them says a single word, curt but not cruel. You sit in the mud, legs trembling, arms hanging loose. The ground is soft beneath you, and for a moment you think about lying down completely, just letting the rain bury you in its cold forgiveness. Hella catches your arm. "Don't," he says quietly. "You'll drown before you sleep." You nod and stay upright, though your body aches for the stillness. The lieutenant sits a few meters away, head bowed, water dripping from his chin. His expression is unreadable, not grief, not surrender, something quieter, heavier. The rain keeps falling. It hits the wreckage, the helmets, the fields. It finds the trenches, the wire, the graves still open and waiting. It washes everything, the living, the dead, the metal, the blood. And in that steady rhythm, you hear it the sound of the world beginning to forget. The rain ends as quietly as it began. When it lifts, the air feels thinner, emptied of noise. The column stops at the edge of a wide field where a new fence stretches across the landscape, tall, neat, unbroken. Its wire is clean, freshly strung, still glistening from the storm. Beyond it, a row of canvas tents stands in even lines, their shapes blurred by distance. The camp. You stand staring at the fence. It's strange how something so ordinary, just wood and metal, can carry so much weight. The lieutenant says nothing, but you can see it in his face. He knows this is where command ends and captivity begins. He straightens his coat out of habit, as if preparing for inspection, and looks toward the guards. A British soldier motions with his rifle. "Inside, line up there." His voice is calm, his accent clipped. No anger, no triumph, only procedure. You file forward one by one. The gate swings open with a creak that sounds almost polite. The mud underfoot changes to gravel, then to packed earth. The wire hums faintly in the wind, a softer echo of the fences by the beach, though this one keeps the living in. Inside, the camp smells of damp canvas and wet straw. A few prisoners are already there, sitting beneath a makeshift shelter, grey uniforms, hollow faces, staring without expression. You join them, the guards counting under their breath. Somewhere nearby, a diesel generator coughs to life, breaking the silence with its steady mechanical rhythm. The sound feels wrong, too alive in this place of waiting. The lieutenant stands apart, arms folded behind his back. A young Allied officer approaches, clipboard in hand. "Name, rank, unit?" he asks, his tone routine, practiced. Kraus answers in clear English, each word precise. The officer nods, scribbles something, and moves on to the next man. When he reaches you, you can't find your voice at first. It takes 2 tries to remember your own name. Hella slumps beside you on the ground. His hands hang, limp over his knees. "We're safe now," he says, but he doesn't sound convinced. You look around the rows of tents, the wire gleaming in the grey light, the watchtower at the far end, with its shadowed figure keeping silent watch, and you wonder if safety and silence have started to mean the same thing. A guard passes, carrying a bucket of water. He stops near you, sets it down, and nods. You drink from your cupped palms. The water is warm, flat, but it feels almost holy. It's the first thing in hours that doesn't taste of smoke. As dusk falls, the wind moves through the wire, making it hum like a low, endless note. The men settle into quiet, their shapes folding into the shadows. Across the field, someone begins to whistle a tune too faint to recognize, too fragile to last. You sit with your back to the fence, listening to it sing softly in the dark. It's the same sound the sea made before dawn, steady, patient, and impossible to escape. Night settles without ceremony. No sunset, no color, only a slow dimming, as if the world has decided it's seen enough. The camp falls quiet. The men speak in murmurs, their words swallowed by the hum of the fence and the drone of the generator somewhere beyond the tents. The air is heavy with the smell of wet straw and sweat, but beneath it all lingers something fainter, cleaner. Rain drying on canvas, wood smoke from the guard's fire. You lie awake on the ground, too tired to sleep. Every time you close your eyes, you see the sea again, the flashes, the waves breaking over black shapes, Becca's helmet rolling through the smoke. When you open them, you see only wire and sky. Neither feels real anymore. The lieutenant sits a few meters away, his silhouette straight-backed against the pale glow of the guard tower light. He's holding something small in his hands, turning it over between his fingers. You recognize it by the faint silver corner that catches the light, the photograph. The one he kept folded in his pocket since before the invasion. He stares at it for a long time before finally speaking. "My wife sent this 2 years ago," he says quietly, not looking up. His voice sounds rough, as if the words themselves are rusted. "Our daughter was born that spring. She's 6 now." He pauses, rubbing his thumb across the paper. "I wonder if she would know me." No one answers. There's nothing to say that doesn't sound like breaking something fragile. He continues, almost to himself, "I used to think this picture was a promise, that if I kept it safe, I would come home to them." He holds it up to the faint light, studying it. "Now I think it was a warning, that nothing survives being carried this far." The guard on patrol passes by, his boots crunching in the gravel. The beam of his flashlight sweeps across the camp, glinting off the wire, the helmets, the mud-smeared faces of sleeping men. It stops briefly on the lieutenant. The guard hesitates, then lowers the light and keeps walking. You shift in the straw. "You'll see them again," you whisper, though even as you say it, the words feel weightless, like smoke. Kraus folds the photograph carefully and slips it back into his pocket. "If the world allows it," he says. "If she remembers who I was." For a long while, neither of you speaks. The night deepens. The generator coughs once, then dies, and with it goes the last sound of industry. What's left is wind and breathing, the raw rhythm of things that can't be conquered. Across the camp, someone begins to cry softly in his sleep. Another man hums a lullaby, off-key but steady. You close your eyes again. The image of the photograph lingers in your mind, the frozen smiles, the sunlight, the promise of a world untouched by this one. And when the wind moves through the fence again, it sounds almost like the turning of a page. The nights come faster here. Time moves differently inside, why the days stretch like shadows, and the darkness drops without warning. The first evening after surrender, you learned that the camp doesn't sleep. It only grows quieter. Even silence makes a sound. The creak of canvas, the low hum of the generator, the occasional cough that reminds you how close everyone still is to being human. You lie beneath a torn blanket, watching your breath fog the air. The temperature has dropped again. Somewhere down the line, a guard hums softly, a tune you can't place, slow and melancholy. The melody drifts through the night like smoke, filling the spaces between heartbeat and memory. Across from you, Hella sits cross-legged, his back against a post, rolling a cigarette he doesn't have the means to light. He goes through the motions anyway, paper, dust, breath, the ritual itself more important than the result. "I keep dreaming of home," he says quietly, "but it's Never the same place twice. Sometimes it's my street, sometimes the barracks, sometimes just the sound of rain on the roof. You don't answer. Dreams have become too fragile to name out loud. The lieutenant is awake too. He stands near the wire, his coat pulled tight, staring toward the watchtower. The guard up there has a flask, its metal glinting faintly as he raises it. For a second, you wonder what it tastes like, that kind of warmth. The officer turns away before the thought can take root. The smell of damp straw and metal fills the tent. A few men whisper prayers in the dark, the words blending into one long, murmured sound. It isn't desperation anymore, just habit, a way of keeping the mind from slipping into the same stillness as the body. You close your eyes, but the world behind them isn't sleep. You see flashes again, the sea, the fog, the muzzle fire, Becca's laughter in the bunker, the boy's eyes, wide with disbelief, the angel in khaki fading into the mist. All of it loops and folds until it feels like the memory has become a place you still live in. Rain begins again, soft this time, drumming lightly on the tent canvas. You listen to it the way you once listened for engines, searching for rhythm, for warning. The difference is that now, the sound brings no danger, only distance. The war is still happening somewhere, but not here, not tonight. The lieutenant finally lies down. Hella mutters something about tomorrow, about food, about transport, and then trails off mid-sentence. Within minutes, his breathing evens out. You stay awake a little longer, watching the faint light from the tower spill across the wire. The guard still hums, his tune lost in the rhythm of rain. When you finally close your eyes, you realize that the sound of the camp, the breathing, the wind, the quiet, has started to sound like the sea again. Only calmer now, only softer, the kind of sea that remembers. Morning arrives without sunlight. A grey haze hangs over the camp, thick as wool, pressing low against the wire. The guards move slower today, their shapes blurred in the mist. The sound of boots and the clink of metal cups echo across the yard, small noises that seem too alive for a place that feels half asleep. You sit against the tent pole, holding the stub of a pencil someone traded for bread. The British clerk said paper would come soon that families might write once the lists were sent. The thought of it lingers like smoke, impossible and fragile. Hella leans over your shoulder. "What will you say?" he asks, though it's clear neither of you expects the answer to matter. You stare at the page. The first word takes forever. Mother. Then nothing. The pencil hovers. Every sentence you imagine sounds false, too small for what the world has become. You could write about the sea, the fire, the noise, but words don't carry sound, or smell, or fear. They only describe ghosts of them. Across the yard, the lieutenant stands near the fence, speaking to the sergeant who guards the gate. They talk in gestures more than words, tired nods, the language of soldiers who've seen too much of the same things from opposite sides. When they finish, Kraus returns to the tent and sits quietly beside you. After a long pause, he says, "I wrote my first letter 2 months ago. I never sent it. I didn't know how to end it." He looks at the paper in your hand. "Don't make the mistake I did. Write something real. Anything you'd want remembered if it never arrives." You think of the photograph he carries, creased and fading. You think of your mother's hands, always smelling faintly of soap and earth. You start again. "I'm alive. The sea was louder than God." Then stop, ashamed. You crumple the paper and shove it into your pocket. The lieutenant doesn't look at you, but he nods, as if he understands anyway. "Sometimes," he murmurs, "survival itself is the letter." The fog thickens, swallowing the fence line until it disappears completely. It could be any morning, any place. You could almost believe there's no wire at all. Hella hums under his breath, tuneless and low. The sound mixes with the wind, moving through the camp soft, almost kind. A guard passes, carrying a sack of bread. He leaves one loaf by the door, nods once, and moves on. You tear it into pieces, hand them out, listen to the faint rhythm of chewing, the sound of men who have run out of words. When the fog finally lifts, it leaves behind the faintest shimmer on the wire, like frost. You pull the crumpled page from your pocket, smooth it out, and stare at the half-finished sentence. I'm alive. You stop there. Some letters don't need to end. The whistle doesn't blow. For the first time since you arrived, morning comes without command. No barked instructions, no shuffle of lines forming under grey sky. Just the quiet, heavy, absolute, almost suspicious. You wake to it slowly, the absence itself loud in your ears. The air smells cleaner today, less of smoke, more of dew and metal. A faint wind drifts through the camp, stirring the flags that hang limp from their poles. The guards stand near the gate, smoking, speaking softly among themselves. One of them laughs. The sound is so ordinary it feels almost cruel. You sit up, rubbing your eyes. Around you, the others rise too, uncertain, slow, like men waking from a shared dream. No roll call? Heller whispers. His voice cracks, half afraid the sound might summon the routine back. You shrug. The lieutenant is already awake, standing outside the tent, his face turned toward the watchtower. He looks smaller somehow, the edges of him blurred by the light. The sun, or something close to it, seeps through the mist, a pale coin behind the clouds. The camp looks different in it, softer. The wire glints instead of glaring. Even the guardhouse seems less like a threat and more like part of the landscape. It's the kind of light that makes you remember colour, though none of it has returned yet. A British corporal walks through the camp, clipboard in hand, his boots crunching lightly in the gravel. He stops at each tent, exchanging a few quiet words in broken German. When he reaches yours, he glances up, surprised to find everyone already awake. Orders are changing, he says slowly. You'll be moved soon. Trucks in the afternoon. Moved where? Heller asks. The corporal hesitates. South, he says finally. France still needs clearing. His voice carries neither threat nor comfort, just direction. Then he nods and walks on. The lieutenant watches him go. South, he repeats, almost to himself. The war moves, even when we don't. You watch the fog begin to lift, revealing the road beyond the fence, long, winding, the edges lined with tire ruts and puddles. Somewhere beyond it, the sea waits, invisible but still near enough to taste in the air. You wonder if the sound will reach this far when the wind shifts that dull, endless rhythm that feels more like memory than water. Heller squats beside the empty bucket, tracing circles in the dirt with a stick. Do you think they'll send us home? He asks. The lieutenant doesn't answer. His gaze stays fixed on the road. Home, he says finally, is a direction that doesn't exist anymore. The silence that follows is light but sharp, like glass in your throat. Somewhere, outside the wire, a bird sings. One clear note that seems too alive for this place. It fades quickly, swallowed by distance. And for a brief moment, as the guards shift and the morning settles into its fragile stillness, you realize the strangest part of all. You no longer expect orders. The trucks arrive after midday. Engines coughing, gears grinding. Their arrival is the first real sound to break the stillness since dawn. Dust rises in pale clouds, settling on boots and canvas. The guards move with routine precision, calling numbers, gesturing toward the open beds. The prisoners file out in silence, grey uniforms, hollow eyes, the faint shuffle of boots against gravel. You stand near the fence one last time. The wind has picked up, brushing through the wire with a low hum. It sounds almost like the sea again, that slow, endless breathing you haven't heard since the morning of the invasion. You close your eyes for a moment and almost feel the salt on your lips, the sting of sand in the wind. When you open them, the horizon is only land. The lieutenant climbs into the first truck. His movement is stiff but steady. He doesn't look back at the camp, not even once. You follow, climbing after Heller, whose hands are still bound loosely at the wrists. The wood of the truck bed is damp, smelling of fuel and rain. You sit with your back to the cab, knees drawn up, the engine vibrating through the planks beneath you. When the convoy starts moving, the camp shrinks quickly behind the tents, the guard tower, the fence line, all fading into the same grey blur. The sky above is low and colourless. You pass fields still cratered from shellfire, ditches full of water, the skeletal remains of barns and fences. Occasionally, a church spire appears on the horizon, some still standing, some reduced to jagged teeth against the sky. The road winds through villages that look more like ghosts than places. Windows shattered, signs missing, the names of towns reduced to soot. A few civilians stand by the roadside, faces blank, hands tucked into pockets. They watch the trucks pass without expression, as if the war has already taught them how to stop seeing. Heller breaks the silence first. "It's strange," he murmurs. "You can destroy everything, and the world still looks the same from far away." His words fade into the hum of the motor. The lieutenant sits opposite you, his cap pulled low, his face unreadable. The photograph is still in his pocket. You can see the faint outline through the fabric. His hand rests there occasionally, as if to make sure it hasn't vanished. Hours pass. The sun slips lower, a dull disk behind clouds. The road turns south, just as promised. Somewhere beyond the hills, artillery still mutters like a storm that refuses to die. But it's distant now, too far to reach you, too faint to change anything. You rest your head against the side of the truck, eyes half closed. The vibration numbs your body, rocking you into something that isn't sleep but feels close. The hum of the engine blends with the wind, the sound of boots, the faint whisper of men breathing beside you. And for the first time since the wall broke, since the sea turned red, since the bunker fell in on itself, the noise feels like something else entirely. Not war, just movement,